השם קיווה, אז ירננו מכל נצח לפני השם קיווה, לפני השם קיווה לשפוי, קיווה לשפוי דסנת, לפני השם קיווה לשפוי, קיווה לשפוי דסנת, לפני השם קיווה לשפוי, קיווה לשפוי דסנת, לפני השם קיווה לשפוי, קיווה לשפוי דסנת.
Az Anu by Rabbi Shlomo Katz. How's everybody doing? Great to be with you on a Sunday. I'm going to keep it moving. Sharon is with us in Lebanon, New Jersey. Stephen in New Hampshire. Yehudit in South Carolina. Melissa in Great Neck. Timothy in Arizona. John in Maine. Paul in Chicago. Bella in Florida. Rick in the Chicago area. Bill. Shalom from mid-Missouri. Sorry for my absence the last 2 days. I was busy with work. Bill, don't even worry about it. So glad you're here today. Hannah in New York. Where am I? Barry in Indianapolis. Watts. Keep skipping on me. Watts from Kentucky. Shandora from the Bronx. Aaron wishing us a Shavua Tov, a good week. Sharon, my husband, who has been listening in recently, said that after this tractate, we will have earned a double siyum. Maybe he was thinking a double l'chaim. Amen. Challenging, but we're working our way through this tractate. Aoife in Florida says, good evening. Welcome, everybody. Great to be with you. Okay, now that the clocks have changed, so like in the winter, I go to Mincha Marav, afternoon and evening services, before our class. And then in the spring and fall, I can only go to Marav later, the evening service. That afternoon just, coincides with our class. But as we head for summer, I can make it to Mincha Marav after our class. So going to try to keep it efficient, and I'm sure nobody will mind. Okay, so yesterday we were talking. Why don't I just read the every day after class, I just do a little summary of what we learned that day. It occurred to me it would be good to just start with that to set the scene, right? So yesterday, does yibum or chalitza, levirate marriage, or the ceremony which releases a surviving brother and the widow from levirate marriage, does yibum or chalitza apply if the brother and woman, if the brother, the surviving brother and the widow, violated a prohibition by marrying in the first place? If the one who died and his wife had violated a prohibition when they married, now that he died childless, does chalitza or yibum apply to her? This could happen because the surviving brother performed chalitza with the widow and then married her anyway. Okay, so we're talking about the surviving brother. This could happen because the surviving brother performed chalitza with the widow, but then he married her anyway. Or if he remarried a woman whom he had previously divorced and who divorced another man in between. And in such cases where a marriage has violated a prohibition, and we're not sure whether chalitza or yibum applies, what happens to her co-wife? She didn't violate a prohibition, but if she's the co-wife of a woman who is exempt from yibum or chalitza, is she, if that exemption is based on the fact that the marriage in the first place was a prohibited marriage? And this question of a person who was married to a woman, then they divorced, she went and married another man, they divorced, she came back to the first man, and they married again. So that's a prohibited marriage, and that's the case that we're going to continue discussing now. Now, as they work through the law and how it applies to the co-wife, I thought what I would do is let's just read where the law ends up on this question. Right? If one remarries his divorced wife, this is the law, where the debate ended up. If one remarries his divorced wife after she had been married to another man, and then he dies childless, she must perform chalitza with the surviving brother and not yibum. Their marriage was a prohibited marriage, so you would think that neither yibum nor chalitza applies, but in fact, she can't enter into yibum with the surviving brother, but she must perform chalitza with him. Her rival wife performs either chalitza or yibum. And this ruling is in accordance with the discussion here and the opinion on page 12 of Rabbi Yochanan, which is cited later. So that's where we're headed. That's going to be the upshot of the discussion we're in the midst of now. So we're picking it up on the B side of page 11, about halfway down the page. So perhaps once a verse is uprooted from its context, it is entirely uprooted and no longer teaches anything about the subject matter of the chapter in which it is written, right? So if a law doesn't apply because of the particular circumstances of the case we're discussing, does it just not apply to that case? Or is it somehow going to be removed from other laws that are related? Well, in this case, this would mean that the sole significance of this particular verse is in reference to a sota, right? To learn about the case of the man who divorced his wife and then married her again, we were looking at the case of the sota, which usually the sota means the suspected adulteress. But yesterday we were talking about she's a confirmed adulteress. And then if the husband dies while she's in that state of being a confirmed adulteress, so chalitza doesn't seem to apply. Certainly not yibum, because there's this term that she defiled the marriage. Well, is it also considered defiling a marriage when you remarry somebody that you divorced and then married another man in between, which is prohibited according to Torah law? You cannot remarry someone you divorced and who is married to a different person in between the first marriage and the remarriage. So there are those who say the opposite of where we were yesterday. According to the opinion of the rabbis, do not raise the dilemma, as once a verse is uprooted from its context, it is entirely uprooted. Consequently, there is no defilement when a man marries his divorcee, neither with regard to her, nor concerning her rival wife, which would indicate perhaps that the rival wife does qualify for yibum or chalitza. Rather, let the dilemma be raised according to the opinion of Rabbi Yosei ben Kefar. What is the dilemma? Although Rabbi Yosei ben Kefar said that it is with regard to one who remarries his divorcee that defilement is written, one can ask, does the merciful one limit this law by the phrase, that is an abomination, which indicates that he married her divorcee? That remarriage of people who are prohibited to each other, that's a defilement. But the fact that, there was another wife involved, he had two wives. One he divorced, she married another man, then came back and he remarried her. But this other wife, the co-wife, she didn't do anything wrong and he didn't do anything wrong with her. So why would we consider the co-wife situation to be a defilement just because her co-wife committed something that was wrong? And therefore, she should qualify for chalitza or yibum when this man dies childless. Right? So where am I? Does the merciful one limit this law by the phrase, that is an abomination, which indicates, and her co-wife is not an abomination? Or perhaps this verse teaches that she is an abomination, but her children are not abominations, which indicates that her rival wife is an abomination, right? This poor woman who just happened to be, one of two wives of this man who committed a transgression by, marrying somebody that he was once married to, divorced, and she remarried in between. Why should she have to pay a price for that? On the other hand, remember, are we talking about, does she pay a price, or does she have a leniency apply to her? Right? It's not necessarily so that these widows, want to have to deal with chalitza or yibum with the surviving brother. But on the other hand, in the ancient world, to have that option, that they might, remain in the family and go from the brother who died to another brother in the family, may well have been a source of security to her, in a kind of harsh and patriarchal society where women who were alone really were up against it. So Rav Sheshes said to him, you learn, so which is the abomination? To whom does this term abomination apply? Certainly to the wife who, came back to the marriage when it was prohibited for her to do so. And now we limit that is an abomination, but something else isn't. Is it that the co-wife is not going to be staying with this term abomination? Or is it that the children of that union are not considered an abomination? Now, obviously, if there were children, yibum does not apply. It's a different situation, and we would be applying that law to something else. The question there is, if a man and woman were married, they divorced, she went out, married another man, they divorced, she came back to the first husband, they shouldn't have married, but they did. You might think that, it's prohibited, it's an abomination according to the Torah, so then the children of that union would be mamzerim, right? They would be mamzers, which is very, very bad for the kids. But it seems like they're not going to extend that appellation to the kids. Rav Sheshes said to him, you learned it in a baraisa that deals with a case of two Yevamos, two widows, who came before a yavam for yibum. Presumably, there were two wives of a man. He died, and now there's a brother, surviving brother, and there are two women before him. And as we've said before, he performs either chalitza or yibum with one of them, and then the other one is fully released from any obligation. So in a situation where one of the women was fit and the other is disqualified, so it's not that they're both equally qualified to him. One is fit for yibum, let's say, and the other is disqualified. So if he would like to perform chalitza, so then he can perform chalitza with the disqualified woman, and then everybody's released from obligations. And if he would like to enter into yibum, he enters into yibum with the woman who is fit for him to marry, and then the other woman who was unfit for him to marry is released from all obligations. Now, Rav Sheshes analyzes this baraisa. What is the meaning of fit, and what is the meaning of disqualified? If we say that fit means fit for all men, and disqualified means disqualified in general, a woman who had already been divorced is disqualified from marrying any priest, for example, despite the fact that she is fit to marry this particular man himself. Then, since for him she is suitable, what difference does it make for him whether she is disqualified or fit from marriage to others, right? So in our baraisa, we have this, the condition that's being set up is that there are two widows of the same man who died who come before the surviving brother, and they are described as one is fit and the other is disqualified. And they're trying to now say, well, what do you mean by fit or disqualified? Do you mean fit for this man to marry or disqualified from marrying this man? Or do you mean generally fit for marrying a man or a category of men, or generally disqualified from marrying any man or a category of men? So rather, is it not the case, but since he doesn't care, right, if she's unfit to marry others, so long as she's fit to marry him, it wouldn't make sense to present it that way. Rather, says Rav Sheshes, is it not the case that fit means fit for him? She is fit for him to marry. There's no other disqualification like she's his daughter or some other prohibited relation. And disqualified means disqualified from marrying him. There is some other prohibited condition. And what is that case in which a woman is fit or disqualified only with regard to him, but not any other man? This is evidently referring to the case of one who remarries his divorcee. Only to him is she disqualified, but vis-a-vis any other man in the universe, she could marry him. As long as there's not some other weird prohibited relationship. So the deceased brother had remarried his divorced wife after she had married another man, and therefore she is disqualified from entering into yibum with that particular man, but she is permitted to other men. And it is taught there that if he, the surviving brother, would like to enter into yibum, he may enter into yibum even with the fit woman. And this indicates that the rival wife of a remarried divorcee is fit for yibum. Now, the Gemara rejects this analysis. No, actually, fit means fit to all men. Disqualified means disqualified in general, meaning a woman who had already been divorced, who is disqualified not from all men, but she's disqualified from marrying a priest. A Kohen cannot marry a divorced woman. That's a law that the Torah specifies. And that which you said, since for him she is suitable, what difference does it make for him? This is significant because of the statement of Rav Yosef. What did Rav Yosef say? Rav Yosef said, here, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, taught a valuable moral lesson. A person should not pour the water from his well when others are in need of it. What did Rav Yosef mean? That is, one should not cause loss in any situation, even when this relates to his own personal life, if he might thereby cause a future loss to others. Meaning, the same reasoning applies here. If he intends to perform chaltzah, it does not matter to him which of the women he chooses. You only have to perform chaltzah with one of them. But if he does so with the woman who is fit to others, he thereby disqualifies her from marrying a priest. Why? Because the legal status of a woman who underwent chaltzah is like that of a divorcee. It is therefore preferable to perform chaltzah with the one who in any case is disqualified from marrying a priest. Right? One of the women had married the brother, divorced the brother, married someone else, divorced. She's already twice divorced. She came back. She married that original brother, and then he died. The co-wife was only married to one man, and he died. She's a widow. So a Kohen Gadol, a high priest, can't even marry a widow. He must marry a virgin. But a regular priest can marry a widow, cannot marry a divorcee. So let the yavam, the surviving brother, come and do chaltzah with the woman who is a divorcee anyway, and then that releases the co-wife who was never divorced, and so she remains fit to marry a priest. It's not so likely that she's going to want to go and marry a priest, but now she's not disqualified from marrying a priest. Whereas if he performs chaltzah with her, rather than the one who was divorced twice, then she would be rendered unfit to marry a priest. So why do that? Why cause a loss when you have an opportunity not to? Do not pour water out of your well when others need water. Now, the Gemara suggests, come in here a different baraisa. With regard to one who remarries his divorcee, after she had married another, she and her rival wife perform chalitza. So this is a different view. We thought perhaps the one who went out, came back as a divorcee, only chalitza is possible, and then that's going to release the other one, or he has a choice, the surviving brother, the one who was never divorced, he could just choose chalitza or yibum with her. The one who was divorced and then made an illegal union when she came back to the deceased brother, she's not eligible for yibum. Chalitza maybe, yibum definitely not. Now, according to this baraisa, it says that both the divorcee who went out and came back and her co-wife, only option is chalitza, yibum not available to either of them. Now, the Gemara first analyzes the wording of the baraisa. Can it enter your mind to say that both she and her rival wife must perform chalitza? After all, only one wife of a deceased brother undergoes chalitza, not both. Rather, say either she or her rival wife. And this indicates that both women are unfit for yibum. The only possibility is chalitza, and the yavam must perform chalitza with one of them. Now the Gemara, and he should choose the one that was a divorcee, so that the other one is simply released and is considered a widow and not a divorcee. So the Gemara rejects this claim. And did you not already resolve a difficulty in the baraisa by adjusting its language and not interpreting as it is? If so, you cannot cite a proof from here, as you can adjust it differently and answer as follows. She performs chalitza, while her rival wife either performs chalitza or enters into yibum. Now that you're adjusting it anyway because there's something wrong with the baraisa, you could adjust it that either of them performs chalitza, or you could adjust it that the divorcee can only perform chalitza, but the other one could perform either chalitza or yibum. If so, this baraisa proves no conclusive proof that might resolve Rav Yehuda's dilemma. On the same issue, Rabbi Chiya bar Abba said that Rabbi Yochanan raised a dilemma with regard to one who remarries his divorcee after she had been married to another. What is the law concerning the yibum of her rival wife? Rabbi Ami said to him, and you can raise the dilemma with regard to this woman herself. Why not ask if she requires yibum when her husband dies? And Rabbi Chiya bar Abba replied, the law of the divorcee herself is not a dilemma for me, as she is certainly forbidden. And Rabbi Chiya bar Abba explains, as in this case, we state a kal v'chomer inference. If she is now forbidden to one who was previously permitted to her, i.e. her first husband, with regard to one who was forbidden to her, the yavam, who was her husband's brother, that's why she's prohibited to him, is it not all the more so the case that she remains forbidden to him? Obviously, the divorcee that came back and then her husband died without having children, she shouldn't have been married to him, and she's certainly not going to be eligible for yibum to the surviving brother. Says Rabbi Chiya bar Abba, where I raise the dilemma, it is with regard to her co-wife. What is the law in this case? Is the aforementioned kal v'chomer inference, if she was prohibited to the first husband, she's certainly prohibited to the yavam. Is the aforementioned kal v'chomer inference strong enough to invalidate her co-wife, that she is disqualified from entering into yibum with the yavam, or not? The divorcee herself is certainly exempt from yibum. But the question is whether the kal v'chomer inference applies to the co-wife as well. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzhak would teach a different version of this discussion, like this. Rabbi Chiya bar Abba said that Rabbi Yochanan raised a dilemma with regard to one who remarries his divorcee after she had been married to another. What is the law concerning her yibum? And Rabbi Ami said to him, and you can raise a dilemma with regard to her rival wife as well. And Rabbi Chiya bar Abba replied, the law of the co-wife is not a dilemma for me, as the kal v'chomer inference is certainly not strong enough to invalidate the co-wife. She is eligible for yibum. Rather, where I raise the dilemma, it is with regard to the divorcee herself. What is the law? Is the kal v'chomer inference strong enough that it can be accepted even in place of a mitzvah to enter into yibum or not? And Rabbi Ami, now we're on 12a, Rabbi Ami said to Rabbi Chiya bar Abba, we learned it in the same baraisa. In a case where one of the women was fit and the other was disqualified, if he would like to perform chalitza, he performs chalitza with the disqualified woman. And if he would like to enter into yibum, he enters into yibum with the fit woman, the co-wife. And what is fit and what is disqualified? If we say fit, means she's fit for all men, and disqualified means disqualified for all men. Well, since for him she is suitable, what difference does it make for him whether she is disqualified from or fit for marriage to others? Rather, is it not the case that fit means fit for him, and disqualified means disqualified for him? And what is the case in which a woman is fit or disqualified only with regard to him, but not any other man? This is referring to the case of one who remarries his divorcee. And it is taught that if he would like to enter into yibum, he enters into yibum with the fit woman. And this answers Rabbi Yochanan's question. Sounds good? The Gemara rejects this argument. No. Actually, fit means fit to all men. Disqualified means disqualified in general. For example, a woman who had already been divorced is disqualified from marrying any priest, any Kohen. And that which you said, since for him she is suitable, what difference does it make for him? This is significant because of that statement of Rav Yosef. As Rav Yosef said, here Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi taught a very valuable moral lesson, that a person should not pour the water from his well when others are in need of it. Come in here a different baraisa. With regard to one who remarries his divorcee after she had married another, she and her rival wife must perform chalitza. Can it enter your mind that both she and her rival wife perform chalitza? Rather say either she or her rival wife must perform chalitza. This indicates that both women are unfit for yibum, But the Gemara rejects this claim. And did you not already resolve a difficulty in the Baraisa? If so, answer as follows. She performs chalitza, while her rival wife either performs chalitza or enters into yibum. And if so, the Baraisa provides no conclusive proof that might resolve Rabbi Yochanan's dilemma. What does the Mishna, what does the Gemara do? Moves on to a new subject. So there you go. The Gemara cites another discussion concerning women who are prohibited in yibum that were mentioned in our Mishnah. Recall, we're still, here on page 12, analyzing the first Mishnah of the tractate, the first Mishnah of chapter 1, that 15 women are prohibited in yibum or chalitza, and they also exempt their co-wives because they are otherwise prohibited to the surviving brother. Since they're not permitted to perform yibum with him, it's not possible. Chalitza is not necessary either. And if they had a co-wife, also exempt. Now we're looking at the case of a minor who refuses the yavam. Right? So a minor girl, according to Torah law, she could have been married out by her father, or if the father is dead, by her brothers or her mother, to a husband. It's almost like she's given as a slave, really, as a servant girl. And when she becomes an adult, she can be his wife. But she has a right to refuse when she gets older. She doesn't have to accept this marriage. She's going to have a right to choose as she gets a little bit older. And if she does, what consequences will result? So the Gemara cites another discussion concerning women who are forbidden in levirate marriage. In fact, let me read the law where this comes out so it'll help us track the argument as we go through it. If a man's minor wife was a forbidden relative to her yavam, the surviving brother, and she performed refusal as a minor, she performed refusal with regard to this yavam, despite not having refused her husband, right? She was given as a minor to her husband. She did not refuse him. She performs refusal while she's still a minor, just a little bit older of a minor. So she accepted to become married to her husband, but then he died, and now she's still a minor, and she refuses to become married to the surviving brother. Because of that refusal, neither yibum nor chalitza are going to apply, and this is going to now become a girl who's essentially a single, never married girl, even though she didn't refuse the first husband who then died. So if a man's minor wife was a forbidden relative of her yavam, and she performed refusal with regard to this yavam, despite not having refused her husband, her rival wife performs chalitza, but does not enter into yibum. In other words, her refusal of the yavam is not considered a refusal of the deceased. However, the rival wife of a girl who is not a forbidden relative of her yavam and who performs refusal is permitted in yibum, in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan on page 12. Right, the co-wife was not a minor, and she should come before the yavam for either yibum or chalitza. The fact that she has a co-wife who's a minor, who accepted the first husband, but then when he died, she refused, she's still a minor, and she refused the yavam, is just going to remove her from the equation as if she was never there, and the co-wife, who is an adult, is just going to be as if she was the only wife, and she will perform either yibum or chalitza with the surviving brother. That's where the law is going to end up. Now, the Gemara cites another discussion concerning women who are forbidden in yibum. Rav Lili Bar Memel said that Mar Ukva said that Shmuel said, the rival wife of a girl who performed refusal is forbidden. Right? That's not where we end up. Now we're seeing where we're starting, and they're going to have to disprove this, right? So if the deceased brother had two wives, one of whom was a minor, who refused the brother who sought to be her yavam, not only is she forbidden in yibum, but so too is her rival wife. And the Gemara asks, to whom is she forbidden? If we say that she is forbidden to the other brothers, this cannot be the case, as now that she herself, the girl who actually performed refusal, is permitted to them because it's as if she was never married, not to the yavam and not even to the original husband. So then she's just like a single girl who's never married, and therefore she never was the brother's wife. There is no prohibition of brother's wife. So she's actually permitted to the other brothers as if she's like a girl they just met. So she's permitted to the other brothers. Well, then this cannot be the case as now that she herself, the girl who actually performed refusal, is permitted to them. As Shmuel said, a minor Yevama who refused this brother is permitted to that other brother of the deceased husband. So is it necessary to state that her rival wife is likewise permitted, at least in Yibum or Chalitza? Rather, it means that this minor girl who performed refusal with the Yavam, she's going to be forbidden to him, to the Yavam. He can never come back and marry her. She's refused him, they're done. As she refused a specific brother. So both she and her co-wife are forbidden to the brother that she refused. But the co-wife and is going to come up for a chalitza or yibum with other brothers, and the girl who refused as a minor, she's just a single girl who's permitted to any of the brothers. Ooh. Never lit that up. Okay. Rather, it means that she's forbidden to him. As she refused a specific brother, both she and her rival wife are forbidden to him. And the Gemara clarifies. And what is this law of the rival wife? And in which way is this law of the rival wife, the co-wife, different from that of the one who performed refusal, who is permitted to the other brothers? If the reason is that she did not perform any act of refusal with them that might nullify the obligation of Yibum, so her co-wife did not perform any act with them either, and therefore she should be permitted to all the brothers. And the Gemara answers, this is a rabbinic decree. There was a policy matter here. This is a rabbinic decree imposed due to the case of a co-wife of one's daughter who performed refusal. Right? In ancient times, a girl could marry her uncle. Right? So she married her father's brother, then he died, and then she comes before the yavam. Who's the yavam? The brother of the man who died. Who's that? Her own father. That's a clear case of prohibited. They can't marry. Therefore, yibum doesn't apply, and halitza doesn't apply. But if she's a minor, right? If she's a minor who accepted the uncle, but now she can refuse her own father, rather than be excused from chalitza or yibum as a surviving wife. Not sure what's going on there, but okay. Rather, okay, I'm not gonna worry about that. Rather than become a woman who was subject to yibum or chalitza, she could just refuse this yavam, who's actually her own father. Result is she goes back to being a single girl who was never married. So she might well want to do that. And in that case, the rabbis decreed that her co-wife is exempt also. It's a rabbinic decree due to the case of a co-wife of one's daughter who performed refusal. If the girl who refused was his daughter or any other forbidden relative, her co-wife would be forbidden as the co-wife of one's daughter. Therefore, the sages rendered forbidden the co-wives of other women who perform refusal, not only his daughter. And the Gemara asks, and is the co-wife of a daughter who performed refusal actually forbidden? But didn't we learn in the Mishna? And with regard to all these women, if they died or performed refusal with their husbands, their co-wives are permitted. Why would we say the co-wife is prohibited when this Mishnah specifically said the co-wives are permitted? Because if the minor wife, her co-wife who's a minor and then performed refusal, it's like she was never married at all. And the Gemara analyzes this statement. Whom did the girl refuse? If we say that she refused the husband, i.e. the deceased brother before he passed away, this is exactly the same as the case of a divorcee. And the Mishnah explicitly states that if one's relative who had been married to his deceased brother died, or refused her husband, or was divorced, no prohibition applies to her co-wife. What is the difference between refusal and divorce? Rather, is it not referring to a case where she refused the yavam. If she refuses the yavam, right? It's a different case if she refused the brother who died before he died. Then at the time that he died, this woman was not married to him. That's why yibum doesn't apply in that case. It must be, therefore, that what we're talking about is a minor girl who was married to that husband, hadn't refused him. They hadn't slept together. They were just, she was just living in his house. But she was betrothed to him, even as a minor. She had not refused him. Then he died. Now she comes before her own father as a yavam, since, she married her uncle. And she performs refusal with the yavam. If she refuses the yavam, her father, her yibum bond is broken, and her co-wife is no longer considered the co-wife of a forbidden relative. It's like the co-wife is the only wife. Consequently, the co-wife is fit for yibum with the surviving brother. This shows that no prohibition applies to the co-wife of a daughter who performed refusal. And the Gemara answers, no. Actually, it means that she refused the husband. And two types of divorce are listed in our Mishnah. Divorce by Torah law and refusal, which is a form of divorce that applies by rabbinic law. And the Gemara asks, and what is different between the two cases? Since refusal is not actually divorce, but is a form of annulment that nullifies the matrimonial bond retroactively, when she refuses her husband, it must be said that she uproots the marriage, like there never was a marriage, and therefore the rival wife should be considered permitted to the yavam. If so, when she refuses the yavam, one should also say that she uproots the first marriage. And the reasoning is that she cannot actually refuse the yavam, as she was never married to him. Rather, it must be that she annuls her first marriage, and the bond with the yavam is therefore automatically canceled. Consequently, it is as though she was not married at all, and there never was a co-wife. That other wife was the only wife. The Gemara explains that Shmuel's reasoning is due to the statement that Rami Bar Yeheskel taught in a Baraisa. Rami Bar Yeheskel said, if a minor refused her husband, she is permitted in marriage even to his father, as refusal completely nullifies the marriage, as though there had never been any marriage. So therefore, right, that's why you can't marry a man and his father, but if she refuses the son, then she was never married at all, and she's eligible, she could marry his father, or vice versa. She could have, she would remain, if she refuses the father, she was never married, and therefore she remains eligible to marry the son. However, if she refused the yavam, not her husband, then she is forbidden to his father. Apparently, from the moment when she came before the yavam for yibum, she appears to be his father's daughter-in-law. Since at the time of her husband's death, she had not yet performed refusal, to all appearances, she was the father's daughter-in-law. Consequently, although the marriage of this minor was not valid by Torah law, since it wasn't ratified yet, any observer would have assumed that it was a proper marriage. Therefore, the sages decreed a girl who refused her yavam is forbidden to his father, so that people would not take lightly the prohibition of those with whom relations are forbidden. That rabbinic decree was a fence around this Torah law. So here too the same reasoning applies. From the moment when the other wife came before the yavam for yibum, she appears to be the co-wife of his father's daughter. And for this reason, she is forbidden, despite the fact that she is permitted by Torah law. And Shmuel's reasoning that the co-wife of a girl who performed refusal is forbidden is therefore a rabbinic decree due to the case of the co-wife of a daughter who performed refusal. And that concludes our discussion of the girl who performed refusal and the fate of her co-wife. Now we're going on to another case of a woman who is exempted from yibum and chaltzah that was mentioned in our Mishnah. The Gemara continues to discuss various cases of prohibited women to the yavam. Rav Asi said, the co-wife of an aylonis, a sexually underdeveloped woman, a woman who could not have children, not because she's sterile, but because she doesn't even have properly developed sexual organs. So she's sterile, but she's also undeveloped sexually. Even though it's not because she's a minor, right? This is, it's just a medical condition. So in other words, if one of the wives of the deceased brother was an aylonis, who is incapable of giving birth, the mitzvah of yibum does not apply, as it is stated with regard to a woman who requires yibum, Deuteronomy 25:6, the firstborn that she bears, right? So the whole purpose of yibum is that the brother who died without having children, so the surviving brother steps in, marries the widow, and the first child of that union is considered the son of the brother who died without having children. So the purpose of yibum is to have children, not to form a couple, to gratify sexual desires. The stated reason of yibum is to give a child and an heir to the brother who died before he had children. So if the woman is incapable of having children, then yibum does not apply to her, which comes to exclude an aylonis who cannot give birth. Since the laws of yibum do not apply to an aylonis, she retains her status as a brother's wife, who is forbidden, and therefore her rival wife is also exempt from yibum. Now, Rav Sheshes raised an objection to this from a Mishna. 3 brothers are married to 3 unrelated women, and one of the brothers died, and a second brother performed yibum with the yavam, right? 3 brothers, 3 wives, one of the brothers dies. The yavama, the widow, comes before one of their surviving brothers, and he marries her in yibum. So now that second brother has 2 wives, his original wife, and now he married his brother's widow. Now, a yibum betrothal does not have the legal status of a regular betrothal, as the yibum bond between yavam and yavama is not dependent upon betrothal. Rather, it represents a kind of continuation of the previous marriage with her deceased husband. Full marriage with a yavama is affected by sexual intercourse alone. Right? Normally, there's 2 steps in marriage, which these days are sort of combined into one, and both happened on the wedding day. It's not when you get engaged that you perform a betrothal, but rather Kiddushin and Erusin happen in a modern Jewish wedding at the same time. But in the old days, when they became betrothed, it was a marriage bond already, even though they didn't consummate that possibly until later, sometimes much later. So what they're saying here is the yibum and the yavam and yavama bond acts like a betrothal, in that as soon as the brother who was childless dies, there is a bond between the yavam and the yavama, which they have to deal with. Either they get married, and all they need to do to get married is sleep together, right? Because it's a continuation of that first marriage. They don't have to stand under a chuppah to be married. As soon as they have intercourse, they're married. Or they dissolve that bond, that union that they have, that obligation to each other, they dissolve it by performing chaltzah. Okay, so rather, the yavam and yavama bond represents a kind of continuation of the previous marriage with her deceased husband. Full marriage with a yavama is affected by sexual intercourse alone. However, for reasons of modesty, the sages instituted that the act of betrothal should apply to a yavama as well. Right? So now they made a rabbinic decree which modified the written law to protect the modesty of the woman. And this brother who performed the levirate betrothal died before consummation of the marriage. So now there were 3 brothers, right? So the second brother came before the yavama, and he said, I will marry you, right? I will perform yibum with you. So, and they probably had some kind of a kinyan, he gave her a ring, or she took a handkerchief. There are various acts to make it clear that they had become betrothed. Normally, you don't need a betrothal for them to be betrothed to each other because of that continuing bond. But they did perform one, and that is rabbinically recognized for reasons of modesty. But then he died. Okay, so now she's going to come before the third brother. Is she coming before the third brother simply as the yavam of the first brother who died? Or is she now the yavam of the second brother who betrothed her and then died before they consummated the union? What is her status now? So in this brother who performed the levirate betrothal died before consummation of the marriage. In this case, both of these, the wife of the first brother who had already come before the second brother for yibum, and the wife of the second brother, perform chaltzah and may not enter into yibum with the third brother. As it is stated, and one of them dies and he has no child, the wife of the dead man shall not be married outside of the family to one not of his kin. Her brother-in-law will have intercourse with her. Deuteronomy 25:5, unless they perform chalitza. And this implies that the option of yibum applies only to one who is subject to the yibum bond of one yavam, for only one deceased brother and not the bond of two yavamim, since it is considered as though the first widow has two levirate duties to fulfill. Neither she nor her rival wife may enter into yibum at all. And it is taught with regard to this issue that Rav Yosef said this is an example of a co-wife of a paternal half-brother's wife, i.e. a fully fit yavama, for whom coming before the yavam for yibum caused her to become forbidden. In other words, she was fully fit for yibum by Torah law, as all conditions of the mitzvah are present in her case. She was the widow of a man who died childless. He had a brother. They're half brothers, but they have the same father. Okay. She doesn't have some kind of other prohibited relationship with the yavam, so they should perform yibum or chalitza. But what happened? So she was fully fit for yibum by Torah law, as all the conditions of the mitzvah are present in the case. The reason she becomes prohibited has nothing to do with her particular status, but is the result of her having come before a yavam for yibum once already. We have not found in the entire Torah an example like this, where the fact that she was obligated in a mitzvah that she was unable to fulfill means that not only she, but her co-wife as well are both rendered prohibited, a very unusual circumstance. Now the Gemara analyzes Rav Yosef's statement. The emphasis of this is, which indicates that it applies to this case and no other, comes to exclude what? Doesn't it come to exclude the co-wife of an aylonis, which would mean that she is permitted. Although an aylonis herself may marry any man, she is not suitable for yibum, because under yibum, the purpose of yibum is to have a child in the name of the brother who died. She's not capable of doing that, so she's not qualified for yibum, but she can go marry any other man. You know, he doesn't care if she can't have kids. If he's okay with that, she can marry him. There's no problem there. So if so, Rav Yosef's comment indicates that only a woman subject to a double yibum bond and not any other case renders her co-wife forbidden merely by coming before the yavam for yibum. And the Gemara rejects this suggestion. No, Rav Yosef's statement was meant to exclude the rival wife of an aylonis, that she is forbidden. And what is the meaning of this is? It means that this is the one for whom coming before the yavam for levirate marriage, for yibum, caused her to be forbidden. And therefore her co-wife requires chalitza and is not merely exempt. In contrast, in the case of the rival wife of an aylonis, she does not even require chalitza. What is the reason for this difference between the two cases? This one, an aylonis, is exempt from yibum by Torah law, while this one, who is betrothed by yibum to the other brother, is forbidden by rabbinic law, and she therefore must perform chalitza. And the Gemara cites another relevant source we learn in the Mishna. With regard to all these women with whom relations are forbidden, if they died, or they refused their husbands, or were divorced, or were found to be an aylonis, their co-wives are permitted in yibum. This ruling apparently contradicts the statement of Rav Asi that the co-wife of an aylonis is forbidden. And the Gemara responds, La kasha, this is not difficult. Here, Rav Asi is referring to a situation in which her husband knew that she was an aylonis prior to the marriage, and he married her anyway. regardless of her condition, and their marriage is fully valid since the mitzvah of yibum does not apply to her because she cannot give birth. Her co-wife is also exempt. But there, in the Mishna, it is referring to a case where he did not know that she was an aylonis at the time of marriage, but only at a later stage. Since in this case, it can be said that he would not choose to marry an aylonis. Hers was a mistaken betrothal, and it is therefore nullified. Consequently, her co-wife would be permitted. And the Gemara comments, the language of the Mishnah is also precise as it teaches were found to be an aylonis, and it does not teach was an aylonis. And this indicates that her condition was not known to the husband at the time of the marriage, but was discovered by him only later. And the Gemara conclude from this that this is the correct interpretation of the Mishnah. Consequently, the Mishnah does not contradict the opinion of Rav Asi. Rav has said, and the law is, that the rival wife of an aylonis is permitted, and this is the case even if her first husband knew her status and her marriage was fully valid. And the mitzvah of yibum does not apply to an aylonis, but her co-wife is not prohibited. And even in the case of the co-wife of his aylonis daughter, who was recognized as such, the other wife is not considered the co-wife of a forbidden relative. I'm almost done. The Gemara asks, however, with regard to that which the Mishnah teaches, were found to be, from which it was inferred that there's a difference between an aylonis whose condition was known by the husband beforehand and one who was recognized by him only later. How do we explain this? And the Gemara answers that one should amend this and teach simply that was, and not was found to be. And when Ravin came from Eretz Yisrael, he said that Rabbi Yochanan said there is one law with regard to the rival wife of a girl who refused her husband, and the rival wife of an aylonis, and also the rival wife of one who remarried his divorcee. Those co-wives are all permitted. That's where we knock off today. I have time for just a couple of questions. From Lucy, this daf keeps reminding me of the prophet Hosea, who married Gomez, who was unfaithful, and God told him to take her back. I don't see the rabbis considering that story in their analysis. Is that because this is a prophet and not the Torah? Well, he took her back, but it's not really relevant to this discussion because there never was a yibum situation which followed that, right? In which the prophet didn't have kids. In fact, he did have kids with her, right? I think she was an unfaithful wife even after having kids. So just the general topic of marrying your divorcee could have come up, but I guess, they're really talking about the rules of what happens to a yibum, a yevama, and a co-wife. But Hosea's story is absolutely fascinating. And really the metaphor there that God was teaching all of us is that no person is too far gone to lose his relationship with God, right? We, the Jewish people, have strayed after other gods. Tragically, God forbid it should ever happen again. And God became furious with us, but he never broke our bond with us, just as Hosea never broke that bond with his wife. Okay, folks, that's what I've got for us today. Tomorrow's daf is a little shorter, and maybe we'll sort of actually get to the end of that daf. And then later in the week, I think there's two in a row that are relatively short, so we can get caught up rather than remaining a day behind the daf yomi schedule. Great to be learning with you on a Sunday. Have a great night. With God's help, we'll be together again.